Welcome back to another chilling episode. Today we dive into three terrifying true night shift horror stories that will keep you up at night. Imagine the sun setting, casting long eerie shadows as you clock in for your shift. The world outside sleeps, but inside these walls fear awakens. These are the stories of those who dared to work when darkness reigns, and the chilling encounters that left them forever changed. A young woman named Sarah took a night shift job at a remote gas station miles from town. The pay wasn't great, but it was the only position she could find. Little did she know she was stepping into a nightmare. Her first few nights were uneventful, filled with the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional truck driver stopping for fuel. But as the weeks passed, a sense of unease began to creep in. It started subtly. A feeling of being watched through the large windows that offered a panoramic view of the desolate highway. Then, strange noises began to echo from the storage room, soft whispers and shuffling sounds. One particularly dark and stormy night, Sarah was alone. The wind howled outside, and the rain beat against the windows like 1,000 tiny fingers. She was trying to distract herself by organizing shelves when she heard a knock. She looked up, her heart pounding in her chest, but there was no one at the door. She cautiously peered out the window, but the storm obscured any view of the parking lot. Just as she was about to turn away, she saw it, a figure standing in the shadows at the edge of the light. It was tall and slender, almost skeletal, with long, sharp fingers that tapped rhythmically against its side. Sarah froze, her breath catching in her throat. She couldn't make out any features, just the unsettling silhouette against the darkness. As quickly as it appeared, the figure vanished, swallowed by the storm. Shaken to her core, Sarah tried to rationalize what she had seen. Maybe it was just a trick of the light, a figment of her imagination fueled by the late hour and the isolation. But deep down, a primal fear told her otherwise. The next few hours crawled by. Every creak of the building, every gust of wind sent shivers down her spine. She kept the lights bright and the radio on, desperate for any sound to break the oppressive silence. As dawn approached, Sarah's fear gradually subsided, replaced by exhaustion. She couldn't wait to leave the gas station behind and return to the safety of daylight. But as she was preparing to close up, she noticed something strange. On the floor, near the spot where she had seen the figure, was a small, intricately carved wooden box. Curiosity warred with fear, but she couldn't resist picking it up. The wood was smooth and cold to the touch, and as she turned it over in her hands, she noticed a single word etched into the bottom. Beware. A chill ran down her spine, and she dropped the box as if it had burned her. From that day forward, Sarah refused to work the night shift. The memory of the figure in the shadows and the ominous warning on the box haunted her dreams. To this day, she can't shake the feeling that something sinister lurks at that gas station, preying on those who dare to work alone in the darkness. Mark, a seasoned security guard, scoffed at ghost stories. He had seen it all during his years patrolling empty buildings at night, or so he thought. His new assignment was an old hospital, its vacant halls holding a century's worth of untold stories. The first few nights were eerily quiet. Mark made his rounds, the only sound his footsteps echoing on the linoleum floors. He checked rooms, stripped bare of beds and medical equipment, their shadows stretching out like grasping claws. One night, as he passed the old nursery, he heard it, a faint lullaby, sung in a language he couldn't understand. He stopped, his blood turning cold. The lullaby was mournful, filled with a sadness that sent shivers down his spine. He slowly pushed open the nursery door, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Dust motes danced in the stale air, but the room was empty. The lullaby had ceased, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake. Mark tried to dismiss it as a trick of his mind, the product of fatigue and an overactive imagination, but as the nights went on, the lullaby returned, growing stronger each time. It seemed to emanate from the very walls, whispering tales of sorrow and loss. He began to notice other strange occurrences, flickering lights and disembodied voices calling his name, and the feeling of being watched even when he knew he was alone. The hospital, once a place of healing, now felt like a prison, closing in on him with each passing hour. One night as he patrolled the surgical ward, he heard a blood-curdling scream. His heart raced as he sprinted towards the sound, his flashlight beam dancing wildly in the darkness. He burst into the operating room, expecting to find an intruder, but it was empty. As he stood there, catching his breath, he noticed something strange. On the dust-covered operating table lay a single surgical instrument, a scalpel, its blade gleaming under the harsh light of his flashlight. Mark's blood ran cold. He knew the hospital had been abandoned for years, yet the scalpel looked brand new, as if it had just been used. He slowly reached out to touch it, but a sudden wave of nausea washed over him, and he recoiled his hand. He fled the operating room, his mind racing. He had always been a skeptic, but the events of the past few nights had shaken him to his core. The lullaby, the voices, the scalpel, they all pointed to something sinister lurking within the hospital walls. From that night on, Mark refused to set foot in the hospital again. The whispers in the walls continued to haunt him, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can linger in the most unexpected places. David, a long-haul trucker, had seen his fair share of strange occurrences on the open road, but nothing could prepare him for the night he encountered the vanishing hitchhiker. He was driving his usual route, a desolate stretch of highway that cut through the heart of the desert. The night was moonless, the only light coming from his headlights piercing the thick darkness. As he rounded a bend, he saw a figure standing by the side of the road, thumb extended in the universal sign of a hitchhiker. It was a young woman, her face obscured by the shadows of a wide-brimmed hat. David was a kind soul, and despite the late hour, he pulled over. The woman got into the passenger seat, her silence filling the cab. She didn't introduce herself, nor did she answer when David asked her name and destination. He tried to make small talk, to break the unsettling silence, but the woman only stared straight ahead, her gaze fixed on the endless ribbon of road illuminated by the headlights. David felt a shiver run down his spine, a sense of unease settling over him. After what felt like an eternity, the woman finally spoke, her voice a low whisper that sent chills down David's spine. "Turn left here," she said, pointing to a dirt road that branched off into the darkness. David hesitated. The road was little more than a pair of tire tracks disappearing into the vast, unforgiving desert. "I'm not sure about that," he said, his voice betraying his growing unease. "It's not on my route." The woman turned to him, her face now illuminated by the dim glow of the dashboard lights. Her eyes, wide and hollow, seemed to burn into his soul. "Turn left," she repeated, her voice cold and commanding. David, his better judgment overridden by a strange compulsion, obeyed. He steered the truck onto the dirt road, the rough terrain jostling the vehicle. The further they drove, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The woman continued to give directions, leading David deeper and deeper into the desert. He tried to engage her in conversation, but she remained silent, her gaze fixed on some unseen point in the distance. Suddenly the truck lurched violently, the engine sputtering and dying. David swore under his breath as he tried to restart it, but the engine wouldn't turn over. They were stranded. He turned to the woman, hoping for an explanation, but she was gone. He frantically searched the cab, but there was no sign of her. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Panic surged through David. He was alone, lost in the desert, his truck dead, and the memory of the vanishing hitchhiker burned into his mind. He spent a terrifying night huddled in his cab, the silence broken only by the howling wind and his own racing thoughts. As dawn broke, he managed to flag down a passing truck driver who helped him contact a tow truck. When he recounted his story, he was met with skepticism and pity. David knew what he had seen. The vanishing hitchhiker, her hollow eyes and chilling silence would forever haunt his memory. a chilling reminder of the unseen forces that may lurk on the open road. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more spine-chilling content. Remember, the next time you find yourself alone in the dark, working the night shift, or driving down a deserted road, think of these tales. Stay safe, and good night.